All right, so first let's review. So last week we were talking about run-on sentences, and this week too. So there are three parts of an independent clause, which means a complete sentence. So the three parts are subject, verb, and complete idea. So when you have two subject, verbs, complete and complete ideas stuck together, that makes a run-on sentence. And there are four ways to separate a run-on sentence. So one is a period, two is a semicolon, which acts just like a period, and remember that's a dot with a comma beneath it. Three, you can use a comma plus one of these words, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, but not a comma by itself. You have to have a comma plus and or a comma plus but. And then last, you could use a subordinating conjunction in between two sentences, like because or although. All right, so colons. Colons cannot separate independent clauses. They do not act like a period, but they can do a couple of things. They introduce a list. We all know that one. But remember, they only introduce a list after an independent clause. So see this underlined part here? It has to be a complete sentence before you use the colon. Let me read this. Example, the catering facility offers the following entrees, colon, fried catfish, grilled chicken, pan-seared salmon, and sirloin steak. That works. You have to have a complete sentence before the colon, and then you can introduce a list. Second, colons also introduce the effect or logical consequence of an action. That means you could say a cause, colon, and an effect, or cause or effect and then logical consequence. So let's look at the example. There was only one way he could win, colon, he had to cheat. We don't use colons like that very often, but they do work that way. And last, you can use colons after a complete sentence, that's important, when introducing a quotation. Here's an example. My teacher's remark on my final essay was very complimentary. That's a complete sentence. Colon, and quote, here's what the teacher said. This essay coherently analyzes musical trends, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. All right, so next, let's look at these sentences here. And I want you guys to practice in your head. Right? I know you're just looking at a computer screen, but practice in your head. Would you use a semicolon or a colon in these sentences? And where would you put it? So let's read number one together. I have invited the following people to my party, Kevin, Amy, and Keely. All right, that's pretty easy because we're introducing a list. So we would basically put the colon after the sentence, but before the list. Here we go. Right there. I've invited the following people to my party, colon, Kevin, Amy, and Keely. Next, number two. I like English. It makes me smarter. Now, I'm not introducing a quote. I'm not introducing cause and effect. And I'm not introducing a list. What I have is two sentences. I like English is a sentence. It makes me smarter is a sentence. So I need a semicolon right after English. Number three, we should get moving. There's no time to waste. Again, we have a run-on sentence here. We should get moving. There's no time to waste. My new sentence starts at theirs, so I need to separate it right there. We should get moving, semicolon. There's no time to waste. All right, last. Number four, I gave you the spray bottles for one reason, to clean the windows. Here I've got like a cause and effect or a logical consequence. So I gave you the spray bottles for one reason, colon, to clean the windows. You won't see this too often, but in case you do, you'll be familiar with it. All right, here's the important part of what we're learning today, the 6 comma rules. So I want you to remember there are 6 comma rules. Rule number 1, use commas after first, second, and so on in a list or series. Okay, here's an example. When packing for a long hike, follow these steps, colon. First, comma, pack comfortable, easy clothing. Second, comma, pack soap, shampoo, and suntan lotion. Third, comma, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so after first, second, and third in a list. Rule number 2. Oh, I gave you a little practice example here. Okay, we also use it in a list of items, so here's a practice. I love running the mile, lifting push-up, or lifting weights, and doing push-ups. So I'd say I love running the mile, comma, lifting weights, comma, and doing push-ups. Use it in a list. Okay, that's easy. Most of us know that one. Rule 2, we use commas between 2 or more adjectives. Remember, an adjective is a describing word. So if I say that is a long blue dress, you would use a comma in between long and blue because those are both adjectives describing the word dress. All right, so let's look at the example here. Flowers have fragile, fragrant petals. So fragile describes petals, and fragrant describes petals. So we have two adjectives in a row. You need to separate those with a comma. Look at example 2. The long, dusty road was full of potholes. Okay, I've got the dusty road, that's an adjective, and the long road is an adjective. So I need to separate my two adjectives with commas. All right. Rule number 3. Use commas to set off words of direct address, such as names, titles, and terms of respect. So here's an easy example. Tina, comma, you're ready to begin your trek. So after a name, so if you ever say, Miss Wynn, I need something, it would be Miss Wynn, comma, I need something. After titles like ma'am or sir, so you would use commas after that. All right, we're almost done. Rule 4. Use commas after introductory words, mild introductions such as oh, yes, no, well, and to separate words that interrupt the flow of thought in a sentence. That's in red because that's the hardest one. Any phrase that interrupts your thought. So let me give you an example. So first I have an example for interjections like oh, well, yes, no. Example, yes, comma, it's important to plan a trip carefully. That's easy. So the next one is an example where you have a phrase that interrupts the flow of thought. So look at this second example. He was ready, comma, in my opinion, comma, to take the test. That yellow area here, it's not necessary. I could have just said he was ready to take the test. But I put in this phrase that interrupted my thought. So I need commas on both sides of that phrase. He was ready, comma, in my opinion, comma, to take the test. Here's some examples. Let's practice. He is ready, I think, to take the test. Same thing. You'd put commas around I think because it interrupts your thought. Example 2. Do I think he's going to get an A? Yes, he is. All right, we've got a word, that introductory word like yes, so we put a comma after yes. Oh, I don't know what happened with that comma. And then last, example 3. The car, cleaned and repaired, is ready to be sold. Really, my sentence just says the car is ready to be sold, but I added this phrase in the middle and it interrupts my thought, so I need commas around it. The car, comma, cleaned and repaired, comma, is ready to be sold. All right, rule 5. Use commas after introductory and interrupting phrases and clauses. Okay, in the forest, comma, these items will come in handy. So after an introductory phrase. In the forest is an introductory phrase. Here's an example. When we got off the plane, it began raining. So you have to ask yourself, where does the introductory phrase end? When we got off the plane, it began raining. Well, here's my subject, it, and here's my verb, began. So my introductory phrase is when we got off the plane. So it's when we got off the plane, comma, it began raining. All right, our last one, rule 6. Use commas to set off appositives and dependent clauses. So an appositive is just a word or phrase that replaces a noun. So if I said my car, comma, the red one, comma, is broken, the red one is a phrase that replaces the word car. Or if I said my brother, comma, Ethan, comma, is nice, Ethan replaces the word brother. That's an appositive. So you put commas around appositives. Let's look at this one. This trail, the one my brother walked last year, is difficult. So the one my brother walked last year is a whole phrase that's basically renaming the word trail. So you need commas around both of those, both sides of the phrase. This trail, comma, the one my brother walked last year, comma, is difficult. So if you need to rewind or pause this video to look at any of the rules and examples again, go ahead and do that. All right, then the sub has a quick practice sheet for you to do. So again, you have this video that you can go back and refer to and remember the 6 rules of commas and remember the different ways that you can use a colon and a semicolon.